Welcome to Richmond Events Podcast, Leaders in the Industry, where we sit together with top-notch leaders discussing important topics in the HR, IT, marketing, finance and healthcare industry. Today's topic will be mainly about uncertainty. For this we have invited Sam Conniff from Livity, who is holding a keynote and discussion group at the Richmond Financial Industry Forum in May. He will talk about what it takes to be a leader in the industry. Sit back and enjoy. Just to introduce a little bit Sam is most recently the creator or uncertainty expert, a unique hybrid of online learning, interactive documentary and psychological intervention. He is the author of the international bestseller and modern life Bible, Be More Pirate. He was co-founder of the Livity, the multi-award-winning social enterprise and youth-led creative network. Co-founder of Digify Africa, providing transformational digital skills to thousands of young Africans. A consultant to brands from Rolex to Red Bull, and a mentor to many entrepreneurs and innovators around the world. Sam, really long experience. Welcome again, and it's great to have you here today. And let's start with the first question. What continuously inspires you to keep working in your field?
Well, thank you very much for having me, of course, and it is very good to be back here. And thank you for embracing the topic, which many people find difficult. The root, I think, what I would say something around problem solving and curiosity. My mind is always switched on, and when there is a challenge, I'm inclined towards trying to get to it. But I don't think that would be a fully honest answer, because these last couple of years have been a real test, and curiosity alone has not got me back in the arena every day. So I think actually there's a deeper feeling, which is around injustice or inequality. So it's not just a problem to solve, the curiosity. It's when there's a wrong that needs righting. And I appreciate that probably sounds quite arrogant, but I'm interested in fixing things. And what I get stuck on is when things don't seem fair. I find it quite hard to walk past something that doesn't feel fair or right. And that's probably why all of my businesses have a social or pro-social or sustainable leaning towards them. And I think that's necessary, certainly in the times when things get really tough, because sometimes it is a fight, right? And I've never been particularly motivated commercially. I mean, to a point, we all have needs. But beyond that, the higher purpose, the stuff that you really draw on when you need strength, yeah, I think it comes from a sense of fairness, a sense of equality, and wanting to solve things, but not just fix puzzles, fix problems.
Okay, that's here very well. And what makes a good leader in your eyes?
I think this is a very live conversation, because I think the dynamic is shifting. I think we'd all agree that a good leader has a role to inspire people, to lift people up. And that has required being able to set out a vision and a clear pathway towards that vision, and that for that vision to be inclusive of the majority of your team. And that's really the thing that distinguishes a real leader, I think, that people want to follow them, because leadership requires the act of followership. And for that, the leader needs to be visionary and inspiring, as well as fun and fair and strong and all of these things. I don't think there's anything new that I've said there.
That's correct, and it's very important to be positive as a leader, I think. And there's an interesting piece of research that said in the top 3 reasons people follow people when you're looking at followership rather than leadership, fun and positivity and humor were really, really high up there. Much more, it's easy to think of leadership as a very serious business. But actually, people like to follow people who can find the lightness or the positivity or just the light. But I think there's something difficult now that you need to add to the mix, because being honest is a really clear part of being a leader.
And the honest truth of the moment is that nobody really knows what's going to happen next. Or at least there is such an overwhelming degree of uncertainty that it is impossible to reliably predict. And how does "I don't know" fit in to a leader's lexicon? And here I think lies a very interesting paradox for anyone in a position of leadership, because if authenticity is key, and you need people to believe in you and see your own fears and vulnerabilities, and if we can't reliably say we know exactly what's going to happen and here is the clear vision, but actually the closer to the truth is this is what we'd like to happen, but we really don't know, how do we begin to say we don't know in a way that is compelling, in a way that is convincing, in a way that is inspirational? I think that's a really hard line. And I don't have the full answer. I have a question. And I see where it goes wrong. And I think we've seen that a lot in leadership the last 2 years, people trying to reach too quickly for what they want to present as clarity. But very often what we revert to, and this is a really big watch out, I think, for leadership right now, is we revert to backward looking narratives. And it's a kind of, it's a playbook really move for some of our some politicians particularly. Let's look to a false certainty in the past, which in a period where things are volatile seems like a good idea. But this is not a time for backward looking narratives. So confidently saying let's go into a space where we don't know what's going to happen isn't what we usually hear from a leader. But my question to any leader out there is how do you do that? How do you strike the right balance of embracing the unknown, knowing that's the direction of travel, not leaning on known knowns or backward or past normals, new normals even, and still inspire people to follow you? I think that's the real challenge for the moment.
Okay, great input from you. Thank you for that. And if you add these a little bit, and how do you apply it to your everyday life, especially regarding uncertainty?
I think it's a daily exercise, like so much of leadership is. What's required very often is a high level of self-awareness. Or something I've recently discovered is explained in neuroscientific and psychological terms as something called metacognition. And meta is a word that's prefixed to lots of words, but in this sense, what it means is our ability to think clearly about our own thoughts and our thought processes. And it's a practicable act. The more we ask ourselves difficult questions, the more we narrate the correspondence between our thoughts and our emotions, our feelings and our decisions, we begin to understand who we are and why we're acting as we know. So many of our actions and thoughts are subconscious. So this is a really key trait for times of uncertainty, because we all have compulsions, that are ingrained in us from a very, very early age, and even very often before we were even born. These are well documented. So what happens in times of uncertainty is most of these subconscious biases or tendencies become more acute. So I'll give you an example. Everybody has a negativity bias. It's natural. It's part of our early ancient protection systems. It's about survival, fight and flight. And as a human being, we tend to evaluate on about a 9-to-1 ratio. So of every 9 situations that a human experiences, the human brain tends to assume that 9 of them are too risky to try, and that 1 of them is an opportunity it will give a green light to. And that's just a good ratio for survival when we were early Homo sapiens. But we've inherited the same survival technique, right? Psychologists a year ago predicted that negativity bias, on average, could have reached a statistic ratio of around 200-to-1, because we're permanently bombarded what the body will pick up as a threat, whether it's an angry email, a difficult text, a social media post we don't like, another headline, the news telling us about a forecast of uncertainty, an unhappy client. There are numerous things that aren't necessarily what we'd call threats now, but the body will pick up as threats. The same signals, the same chemicals are released. So to meet that level of threat or awareness, our negativity bias shoots up to protect us. But obviously, protection is not the same, because right now, limiting our ability at risk is not protection. And if you think about 200-to-1 as a ratio and do the maths, like That would mean in a waking day of, let's say, 18 hours, you've got about 15 minutes where the brain is thinking, oh, okay, I'll give that a try. And the remainder of the day, most situations are being shut down as probably too risky, or might present, a risk, or might create an opportunity for failure. And that's incredibly important to become more aware of as a leader. This the big challenge of all subconscious biases is, of course, they're subconscious. But in ourselves, we have a negativity bias, and it's higher than ever. In our leaders, in our teams, in our managers, in our customers, they're all going through this same process. So no matter subjectively how well you cope with uncertainty, an awareness that everybody has these biases, and there is a fundamental one around negativity, is an example of how a greater level of awareness, because the only way to really overcome biases is to become more aware of them, checking ourselves. Am I saying no to this based on rational judgment? Or is there a fear or something being triggered in me? Is this member of my team, shutting down this opportunity because it's the right judgment they've made? Or is there something else at play? And so informing ourselves with some of these interesting statistics that are taking place and recognizing they're heightened in uncertain times allows, once you're aware of them, to begin to acknowledge them. And on that acknowledgement, we can begin to act. So yeah, I think a key part of leadership in uncertainty is a heightened state of awareness.
Okay, so it's great that you take everybody in that boat and to include all these explaining regarding uncertainty. Thank you for that. What are your plans in the near future? Do you have a special project coming up?
It's it's uncertain. Yes, I do. I began this piece of research during lockdown. I started interviewing what I'm calling uncertainty experts, which is a deliberate paradox, because how can you be an expert in uncertainty? But I was frustrated by the leadership playbook not really rising up to the challenge of real uncertainty. Again, around that point of awareness and clarity and being able to honestly say you don't know. And so I've interviewed people who are unusual in terms of leadership. Their leadership was learnt sometimes in gangs, sometimes as refugees, sometimes in prison, sometimes in all manner of constructs outside the norm that we'd look at for leadership. But because obviously we are not in that world, they've all transitioned into a mainstream setting. So they've become CEOs, or they've become leaders, they've become teachers, authors, business people, gurus, scientists. They're really now successful in a mainstream environment, but they still attribute their success to the school of uncertainty that they learned in the shadows. And in interviewing them, I found some very, very interesting traits and behaviors. And because it's a moral grey area, I've been working very closely with a big London university that has a specialism in decision making and psychology. And we've been putting together an analysis of all these interviews to create, hopefully, some repeatable tactics that other people can use who are really experiencing big uncertainty for the first time in their lives. And I designed it as a kind of interactive online hybrid experience, which was really good for a period of lockdown. And we've just had, and actually by the time I'm out to see you, it will be published probably by the CIPD, the Chartered Institute of Professional Development, a peer-reviewed piece of research about the impact of this program. And it's been absolutely extraordinary on a number of really robust psychological measures that take into account everything from risk-taking to decision-making to open-mindedness to a positive association with uncertainty, to discomfort with ambiguity. So some really clear and necessary measures for both leadership and for well-being and for innovation, key skills for the next few years. We created statistically significant increases in all of them. So I wasn't expecting it to be so successful. It was a very messy experiment run out of my kitchen with a green screen and whatever technology I could hack together. So now I have a big challenge in front of me, which is not having expected this result. How do I now turn this into some kind of product? Is it a book? Is it a course? I'm really uncertain. So I'm in the process of testing out some different materials, and I'm in a very unusual world. I am very not academic. So hanging out with professors in neuropsychology is a very uncomfortable world for me. So I'm living my own advice at the same time. But yes, at some point this year, it's going to actualize into a product that I'm very much hoping will be able to help teams, HR professionals, leaders at scale, and hopefully with even better results than our pilot has revealed.
Yeah, that's good. And you add also some secret tips, I think so. Is there another special tip for our agency to make it a little bit easier in uncertainty?
Yeah. There's lots of techniques that have come out, and one that works really well, or certainly we hear back a lot works really well, is something called cognitive restructuring, which is an elaborate and scientific way of saying reframing, or even the classic mindset shift. And the thing that's we did a lot of research into the negative impacts of uncertainty, and we had hundreds of results from thousands of participants in the research, and they could all broadly be categorized into three areas. Uncertainty causes in people fear, a sense of fog and confusion, and a sense of stasis, feeling stuck. The strongest of those is fear, and overcoming fear becomes a real gateway as to how you can unlock the positive benefits of uncertainty. If uncertainty is going to be a driver of innovation and of change and bringing people together and pushing the company forward, you need to get past that first stage of fear. And the most successful way we've seen of doing that is this technique of cognitive restructuring. And what happens is we asked 3,000 people what their greatest fear was. 87% of them said a fear of failure. Now, that's very understandable, and of course it is, and we all share that fear. But towards the end of the program, 3 episodes later, they're meeting a guy who was a prisoner of war. He was held in Iraq for some time, and he speaks very clearly about retrospectively making decisions, almost making decisions based on your future self. And he encourages the participants to consider the regret that they least want to have. What regret do you most want to avoid in life? And in that similar number, I think 86% said missed opportunity. So now you bring these two things together. So you're facing some short-term fears. Of course you are. We all are. Probably amongst those is a fear of failure. Of course, that's very normal. And that's a huge majority. But if you put your short-term fear of failure next to your long-term fear of missed opportunity and regret, all of a sudden, the imbalance is very clear, because the fear of regret and missed opportunity is so much greater than those short-term fears. And by doing this act, this conscious piece of cognitive restructuring, the brain repositions those fears. Because something that I learned that really fascinated me is the human brain has no concept of time. The brain doesn't do abstract concepts at all. It doesn't, if you can really simulate the feeling of regret, imagine what it is that allowing the short-term fear of failure might mean that you miss out on. You can still have the same emotional suite of feelings in response to it. And so you can really compare and contrast that to the fears that you hold about this short-termness, this fear of failure. And suddenly the decision becomes much, much clearer. And by holding that future fear or regret, people are able to use it to push them forward. When usually fear stops us, it can be a headwind that pushes us forward. And these are directly from the stories of people who've learned uncertainty the hard way. But as we've shared them with managers, with C-suite leaders, with team members, you've seen this moment when people are suddenly able to take action over the short-term bumps of fear and failure that was holding them back.
Okay. Finally, could you give us a small teaser into your topic? What exactly are you going to do for the Richmond Financial Industry Forum? Your topic is uncertainty experts who learned insights in overcoming uncertainty in the shadows and went on to become leading lights in society.
Exactly. So I think we're having an open discussion in the afternoon about my book, Be More Pirate, which is something that I was talking to some of the delegates around last year. So that'll be fun to reconnect with that, because there's been lots of progress. That's now a thriving international community of change in its own right. And then I think just before dinner, I'm going to introduce you to some of the key characters of uncertainty experts who will be, unusual suspects from a leadership perspective for sure. And I'm going to share some more of the insights that we've learned from them. And then I'm going to invite everyone who comes along to take part in a scientific assessment of their uncertainty tolerance. I've got my professor at UCL. He's building something for me. We're going to have it up on the big screens. Hopefully it'll just work via a QR code, and everyone will take a test of their uncertainty tolerance. And I'll explain on the night why I'm arguing that uncertainty tolerance is the new resilience. And your uncertainty tolerance can give you a score and an understanding into your need for closure, your comfort with ambiguity, your open-mindedness, decisiveness, and some many other really, really important traits. So not only will we have a fun talk with some insights and some unusual inspiration, but everyone will also leave with a clearer idea of where their own uncertainty tolerance sits.
Great. Sam, thank you very much for your time for this podcast. And after, I think, 2 or 3 years of cooperation now, we will see you live in Interlaken, and I'm very happy about that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I absolutely can't wait. It was almost exactly this time, wasn't it, that we started booking this thing, and we've been shut down a few times, but nothing is going to stop us this time.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.